console, online. HPG connection, online. Educational module, online. All systems, nominal.
Hello, class, and welcome to On the Origin of Battlemechs Podcast, episode 51, The Firestarter. I am your host, Brent Stewart McKee, and my co-hosts today are...
I'm Joshua.
And I'm Chandler.
And today we are talking about the Firestarter, Part A, so a week of Firestarter. It is, of course, a 35-ton mech, and we are going to only talk about the actual Firestarter, not the Firestarter Omni-Mech, which will be getting its own episode later on.
No Omni-Mechs for you. Not yet.
Yeah, no Omni-Mechs yet, but in time, and sooner than you would think. The Firestarter was first produced by Argyle on Sky and would be the primary manufacturer until its destruction during the Third Succession War. After that, the design proliferated and is now produced all across the Inner Sphere. Designed as a mobile incendiary mech, but soon found a second home as a scout or in scout units. Most Firestarters do not serve on front lines and are assigned to militias. The Firestarter's ability to manipulate not only the heat of the enemy machines, but the terrain is an ability that should not be understated, as many pilots have lost battles due to being ringed in fire and being overwhelmed. The Firestarter is a anti-infantry mech at its heart, but with the increased commonality of battle armor, new models have been developed to keep the Firestarter a mech to be feared and respected. It has the design quirks of being ubiquitous, and it has exposed weapon linkage for the right arm and left arm flamers. Of course, that means whenever you take damage, you have to roll a 2d6s, and if it's a 10 or above, the weapon becomes inoperable. So we should really see a little more often, considering we've seen some mechs that should have feed belts like that, but this is the first time we've seen it codified in the rules.
Space magic.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're an infantryman listening to this, shoot it in the arms and knock out those exposed linkages.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that only cuts the amount of flamer in half, but that's better than 4.
Some of you might survive.
Yeah, just means next turn you target the next arm, right? So the first model we are going to talk about is the FS9-A, seen in 2550. This guy has a movement profile of 696. It has a flamer in the center torso, and it has a rear-facing flamer in the center torso, a small laser in both the left and right torso, and then a flamer and medium laser in each arm. It has 10 heat sinks, and yeah, it is the base first model, and it's designed to set things on fire, and it can do that really well.
Absolutely terrifying to unarmored infantry and protesters alike.
Mm-hmm. And with the heat rules, it also does quite a bit of damage to tanks as well, because you get that 2d6 roll on the flamers instead of heat.
Oh yeah, dangerous.
Yeah, they're surprisingly tough too for a light mech. 5.5 tons of armor is not insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
And since it sticks with smaller, lighter weapons in most of its models, you got a lot of shots, but little damage for each one. I was not impressed with the Firestarter when I first got into BattleTech, but then playing the HBS game and getting shut down by one, and then picking them up and turning them into small laser boats and flamer boats, they've grown on me. They're a lot more useful than I originally expected.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I think once they get ECM and the Beagle Active Probe, I believe it is, later on, it really shines, because especially if you're running the Advanced 62 mod, there's some very interesting models that pop up in that one.
I haven't played that one yet.
Yeah, the Firestarter, you think it's all it's for is for lighting things on fire, but it can do that and more, including lighting other things on fire.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. So this guy's got a battle value of 773 and a point value of 20. We then come to the FS9-K, also seen in 2550, and this guy is the Cretan model. It keeps the movement profile at 696. It's got a flamer in the center torso and also rear-mounted still. It has a large laser in the right arm and then 2 small lasers in the left arm. It has 10 heat sinks and, yeah, just same amount of armor as the
Slightly less armor.
Oh no, yeah, slightly less armor. Just took a spot check at the torso. The legs and the arms have been stripped for armor to compensate for that large laser, because that's a hefty boy.
Yeah. A little bit more geared towards anti-mech or anti-heavy tank fighting, but it definitely can still light things on fire.
Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10 of starting fires, this is a 5, just because it has half as many flamers.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say this is definitely more geared for infantry support rather than infantry clearing with that large laser.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of surprised Kurita, of all people, reduced the number of flamers. You'd think they'd want to pack more on there to make war crimes easier to commit.
Well, they had to figure out a way to differentiate themselves from the Capellan models, right?
Fair.
Is the K a Kurita model? It did start production at the exact same time.
So it is a Lyran design, but I'm assuming that the Kuritans got their hands on it relatively quickly, because there isn't really any clear explanation as to why proliferation happened that quickly, that early on. It only mentions that it had the one main distributor on Sky, the one manufacturer on Sky.
Oh, so looking at TRO 3039.
Oh, it's a companion model, apparently.
Yep, so it's not a Kuritan model. It was...
K for companion. Makes sense.
How does one spell companion in German?
I'm not sure. German is not a language I am fluent in.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if it was with a K. Hold on. Google Translate, you are my friend. I don't want to translate to Hawaiian.
Been talking to Kaji?
Yeah, I was saying Merry Christmas to Kaji. I wanted to make sure the meme I was sending was actually saying Merry Christmas.
Fair enough.
And not like cursing out his mom. It starts with a B, so not quite.
Well, there is another translation, Kajutskape, which also apparently means companion.
Oh, there's also Comrade. Der Comrade.
Yep.
Well, we're all learning.
Obviously, Firestarter is a mech of the people.
Kajutskape.
So this companion model, not Kuritan, has a battle value of 763 and a point value of 19. We then come to the FS9-H. It has the movement profile of 696. It's got a flamer in the center torso, both rear and forward facing. It has a machine gun in the left and right torso, and then it has the flamer and medium laser in each arm. It also has the 10 integrated heat sinks.
We went from I really don't like infantry to I'm going to murder infantry.
And this came out in 2703 and would be the mainstay Firestarter until really right before the clan invasion.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the TROs all note that the other two models, while they exist, weren't nearly as common, and the H is basically what everybody knows.
So it's the iconic model for the line.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I mean, wasn't the H the one Coventry Metalworks picked up since the Argyle plant was destroyed during the Secession Wars?
Yeah, so the plant wasn't destroyed until the Third Succession War, and so I think the Mirage is a much more likely candidate for something like that, as the year lines up with that a little better.
Yeah.
Because we're still Starlink.
Unfortunately, the Mirage is the last Argyle Industries mech, which we will get to when we get to the Mirage.
Which is a nice machine. I do like that.
It is. But yeah, H. H for hate infantry.
Mm-hmm.
Or H for hot.
Hout.
Yeah. Now, as a former infantryman, which is scarier, the machine guns or the flamers?
Flamers. Absolutely the flamers.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah. There's a difference between seeing your friend get shot with a 50 cal, and there's a difference between watching him burn to death. One's a lot more terrifying.
Yeah.
So, the interesting psychologically that the militaries learned during World War I is that flamethrowers, while they would rout enemy units, they wouldn't kill as many people as machine guns. And I think some of it's chalked up to when infantry see flamers coming, they run. So they're not sticking around to get burned to death. But the other issue is flamers are also a much shorter range weapon, and you have to pretty much expose yourself to return fire if you're using a man-portable flamer. Obviously, if you're using a flamer in a tank or a mech, you've got a lot more protection.
Yeah.
So return fire isn't nearly as big a deal, but it's still an incredibly short-range weapon.
And of course, we'd be remiss not to note the ranges of the machine guns and the flamers actually lining up, and the inconsistency with the universe, but hand-wavy space wizard magic.
Yeah.
In-game rules.
So yeah, Just from the psychological effect, the flamers are much more terrifying.
Makes sense. I mean, on my list of ways to die, burning alive is probably on the bottom or close to it at the very least.
It's not just that you're more likely to suffocate to death before the burns kill you. Because that flamer's sucking all the oxygen out of the immediate area.
Yeah, you just can't take in anything.
Thanks, I hate it.
Or if what you do take in burns the lungs and burns you from the inside out.
Thanks, I hate it even more.
Well, this guy has a battle value of 694 and a point value of 20. So I guess the real reason they swapped some machine guns in for the flamers is for critical seeking.
That makes sense.
At least that's my guess. And next up we have the M Mirage, and it keeps the movement profile of 696. It's got a machine gun in both the left and right torso. It's got a medium laser and a small laser in each arm. It also has 11 heat sinks, and it goes back up in armor. In fact, it's got a little more armor than the previous models.
Yeah, that's because this guy's designed to be a scout mech, not an infantry killing mech.
Not that it can't. I mean, it's still got those machine guns.
I mean, it is a little strange to see a Firestarter without a flamer, but this is still a very good mech. It just doesn't light fires, it just opens fire.
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was barely in production for a year before the plant was destroyed, along with the Argyle company, when Sky got attacked and everything got smashed flat.
I believe there was some orbital bombardment involved.
Although apparently the Sky Rangers still maintain a lance of Firestarter 9Ms, and they paint one arm black in order to commemorate that dark period in Sky history.
That is a touching remembrance.
Also, supposedly the M lasted all the way up until the Jihad in their hands, or some very limited manufacturing.
Well, considering it is ubiquitous and the universality of its parts, it's easy to see how so many were maintained for so long. It is mentioned in several records that stockpiles usually had a surplus of their parts.
Makes sense. And it's not like it does anything drastic to change the structure. All it does is swap weapons and change your armor value. So not a terribly difficult refit to do.
The biggest part is probably just taking out those external lines.
Yeah.
So this guy was seen in 2893. It's got a battle value of 798 and a point value of 21. We then come to the S in 3049. This guy, of course, is a Steiner model again, but it gets some new art. And the old art is not bad. It's just not... It looks a little busy to my eye, because every single angle has a line, and it just starts to blend together at a certain point. Like, it is really hard to distinguish the port of the center-mounted flamer on the classic art. So this new art is pretty neat. You get much clearer view of what everything is going on, and its left leg is actually in flames, which is neat framing and thematically appropriate.
Yeah, very flame on.
I have to say I'm not a fan of this newer art. It is a bit easier to read when you compare it to the old art, but it really looks like a commando had a love child with RoboCop.
I mean, isn't that pretty much what a Firestarter is?
Now that you say it, I can totally see the commando influence there.
They're both Lyran mechs, so it makes sense to a degree.
Yeah.
The original art is one of the few in TRO 3025 that I think is pretty good, actually. And this one just feels less, I don't know, it's...
unique?
Not even less unique, it feels clunkier somehow.
That's fair. I mean...
It's because it's in Davian colors, isn't it?
Yes. No, it just feels blockier. Like, all those little lines on the old one kind of help give you an idea of all the different surfaces and angles, and it feels more three-dimensional to me. This guy feels very flat.
That's fair, and I didn't mean to imply that the old art is bad. I think it is actually quite good art. It just is very busy art. You know, it's not something you can glance at and figure out what's going on. It's like, hold on, what? Oh, okay, I see it, you know.
So what you're telling me is the in-between art and the TRO 3050 base book is the ultimate one, because it isn't on fire and it isn't flat.
Is that... Sorry, what model was that?
I'm I'm confused.
Hold on, I'll post it up real quick. Give me a second. I am very fast at clicking. There you go.
Yeah, no, that is definitely some good Firestarter art.
I mean, it's still a little bit more flat than the 3025.
The MWO art is actually good too.
Yeah, the MWO art definitely fits very closely to the original art, especially with the shoulder tanks. Are they supposed to be armor?
Now, this new art for the S has, instead of the pipe lines going from the torso to the arms, it's got little tanks on its shoulder, which are, I always find cute and adorable and completely impractical.
Yeah. I mean, they're there on the original art too.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really goofy. I understand that's supposed to be the propellant and fuel tanks of a flamethrower, but you're pulling it out of your fusion engine according to the lore, so you don't even need them at all.
Well, the first generation flamers did have their own designated fuel tanks, but the later generations, once they were past the primitive cores, they were like, oh yeah, we can tap this, no problem.
Once they figured out they weren't going to explode.
Yeah, which I mean is a fair line to cross before you start messing with it.
Yeah.
So the S keeps the movement profile of 696. It's got the flamer in the center torso and rear mounted in the center torso. It has a small laser in the right torso, and it has a AMS and Beagle active probe in the left torso. Then it has the medium laser and flamer in each of the arms, and it has 10 single heat sinks.
Also gets endo steel.
Yeah, it gets endo steel to help pay for all that extra tech in there.
The fancy stuff. I like it. Definitely starts straddling the line between Scout Mech and Bane of Infantry Mech.
Yeah.
But those are not necessarily roles that negate one another. I mean, if you ain't using your scouting mech for scouting, you might as well have them scouting the graves of infantry.
Doesn't Beagle allow you to detect hidden infantry?
It allows you to detect any infantry hidden unit. Yeah.
Yeah. Any hidden unit, is it 6 or 3? I can't remember how many hexes.
I don't remember either.
Okay, no, the one type of unit Beagle Active Probe can't detect is conventional infantry. That's what your flamers are for.
Ah, there you go.
There may be some infantry in that person's house over there, just to make sure. Let's just light on the fire.
That is what the military calls recon by fire.
Mm.
In this case, literally fire. I like this one a bit better than your bog standard Firestarter.
Mm-hmm.
Because that Beagle Active Probe eliminates the chance that the enemy could be concealing, say, a Hetzer in some hold down foliage in order to deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could not take a 20 anywhere except for the center torso and survive.
So that Beagle helps you spot enemy ambushes before they can ruin your day,
Mm-hmm.
theoretically. The range on it's pretty short.
Yeah, it's 5 hexes. I just double checked.
Yeah.
It's 5 for the clans, and Inner Sphere is 4, to be exact.
So 4.
And the AMS helps protect you against incoming LRM fire when you're doing your dirty work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if you're scouting, of course, LRMs are going to be the most common thing to try and reach out and get you.
yep. So yeah, and basically you're just plopping in an endo steel structure for this guy in order to make those little tweaks. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, out of a lot of the mechs we've seen that just add an endo steel chassis, I think this one uses the extra tonnage really well.
Oh, yeah.
mm-hmm.
It is a little more lightly armored than some of its brothers, but if you're sticking at range and staying mobile, that's not going to be too much of a deal breaker. And, of course, the AMS is armor against missiles, so...
I mean, if you get shot by anything big in any of the Firestarters, you're going to have a bad day, so...
Yeah. You're always going to be a 35-ton light mech. You are not going to have a lot of armor. Your armor is mobility.
And having the standard fusion engine helps a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can limp that baby back home if you need to.
I do find it really amusing that TRO 3050 upgrade, which is where the FS9S is from, claims that there are many variants of the Firestarter after the Third Succession War because so many different manufacturers picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see that until, the 3050s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those hand wavies, yeah, a lot of people modded it sort of thing, right?
And that it basically contradicts all the earlier TROs.
On second thought, let us not go to TRO 3050 upgrades. Tis a silly place.
Tis a silly place. This guy has a battle value of 754 and a point value of 23. We then have the S1 also in 3049, and this is the second Steiner model. It's got all of the same stuff, except it swaps out the Beagle Active Probe for an ECM suite. Other than that, it is exactly the same.
That ECM suite's nice too.
It's almost like they should work together.
Indeed. Perhaps to a lance?
Perhaps.
So this guy's got a battle value of 820 and a point value of 22, really showing how the different systems weight each of those equipments a little differently.
Yeah, that bump in BV just because of the ECM. But that directly helps you not die to Artemis, so makes sense.
But it's a drop under Alpha Strike.
Yep.
Which is interesting.
Because Alpha Strike's weird. Doesn't Beagle Active Probes do stuff for missions in Alpha Strike?
It can give you initiative bonus due to recon, I think, if you're playing with recon and MHQ.
Those rules.
Yeah, which are not standard rules, technically.
So that might be why it's balanced that way.
So the Firestarter C is our final model for the episode, and it came out in 3064. This guy was marketed towards the periphery, but it never really caught hold because the periphery had already all these other wonderful Firestarters to choose from, especially considering it's a ubiquitous machine. So you can understand why it never really caught on. It has a movement profile of 696. It's got 2 rocket launcher 10s in the center torso, 2 rocket launcher 15s in the right torso, and 2 rocket launcher 10s in the left torso. So it's got that medium laser and flamer in each of its arms as well. The big upgrade here is it has Pharaoh, and it has double heat sinks. Still keeps it at 10, but with 20 heat that it can dissipate now, it's doing a lot better than all of its brothers.
Yeah, it can fire all of its rocket launchers in one go and not overheat terribly. Like, you won't have any penalties. So I kind of want 2 of these in a lance with one of the S and S1, and then you just set the ultimate ambush.
That would be a very powerful first turn.
Yes, they would never see it coming.
Well, that's what the ECM's for, right?
They also wouldn't see it coming.
I see what you did there.
I can see it.
Yeah, don't make me put you in the corner.
Let us get out of this place before I keep making bad puns.
So this guy's got a battle value of 940 and a point value of 22. Definitely an interesting design, though. So we're going to move on over to pilot profiles. And our first pilot today is Force Commander Tybalt Roland, commander of a scout company for the Orient Hussars. When raiding Timbiki, his command was cut off from their dropships for 3 days, and after that he set up a massive forest fire that headed towards a major urban center. When the Lyran defenders were pulled back to aid the firefighting efforts, Roland and his command was able to escape. When the authorities arrived to protect the city, they found well-hidden fire breaks that protected the population. So, good on them for a fake forest fire attack? How do we qualify this?
I think this is called gaslighting.
I don't think
it's totally going to burn down the city, guys.
Well, at the very least, it's called environmental damage.
Yeah, the Lyran. This is the Lyran Commonwealth he's raiding, right?
Yep.
The LEPA does not look upon his actions kindly. LCEPA? LAPA?
I'm guessing that they don't have a Smokey the Bear. I'm guessing that's only a PR campaign in the Dominion.
Nah, see what they do is they have a Firestarter campaign. It's like only you can start wildfires, and it's a Firestarter.
Coventry marketing has gone too far.
Has it?
It's lit.
Does everyone own a Firestarter yet?
All right. Next notable pilot is Mechwarrior Jenny Umbra. She's often called Hecate by those who know her. Her Firestarter was not issued to her, nor was it inherited. She actually captured it while fighting as part of Hendrick's 12th Red Claw Infantry. That's some sweet, ironic revenge there. Infantry woman killing and capturing a Firestarter. Unfortunately, she despises her past as a footslogger and hates everything about the infantry. She's also noted for her aggressive, insubordinate, and spiteful attitude, but she's kept around because she's a very talented pilot. And most of the time, in order to not have to deal with her, her leadership sends her on deep penetration scouting missions, which she's become famous for.
Phrasing.
Her mech is painted gray and black and has erratic left arm actuators due to a PPC hit in a battle on the planet of Imbros. She probably died when the clans showed up because she was still in service to Hendrik Grimm III of Oberon.
Yeah, they didn't fare too well.
Oh yeah, that's a bad place to be. Oh no, my arm actuator's malfunctioning again. Sorry, infantry.
So, next up we've got Portia Torrent Ryan. She claims to be related to the famous Red Jack Ryan, but has thrown in her lot with Paula Lady Death Trevelyan when she stopped an assassination attempt on the Lady Death herself. She is in command of the Scourge Company, and her obsessive nature and her attention to detail make her a prime leader and scout. When given discretion, she will happily light the countryside ablaze with a precision and elegance, she almost as if she is painting a picture.
I'm getting the sense that Firestarter pilots tend to, or famous ones at least, tend to be pirates.
Pyromaniacs?
Mentally disturbed and bloody-minded.
Or all of the above.
Probably all of the above most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Our last notable pilot for this episode is Lieutenant William Sanderson. He made his name as an expert city fighter with Hansen's Rough Riders, piloting a Warhammer rather than a Firestarter. Unfortunately, he got shot out of the Warhammer, and his regimental commander offered him a captured Firestarter, which he took because he did not want to become dispossessed.
I mean, who would?
Yeah, I've heard fan theories that being linked to your mech with the neuro helmet creates some sort of stimulation of the pleasure centers of the brain. And people who are dispossessed, it's not just because you don't have a mech, it's also because you can't get your high from piloting it.
Can't get your fix.
You guys got any mechs? Need another hit, man.
Sanderson has nearly been shot out of his Firestarter on multiple occasions as he takes some maybe unnecessary risks in order to try and capture another heavy mech so he can upgrade from the Firestarter he's been forced into.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, he could capture a...
Not gonna lie, I feel a little bad. I feel a little bad about all the pilots in HBS I've forced to just never pilot again now.
I mean,
and now Brent can go.
It would be kind of funny if he did in fact capture a heavy mech and it was just like a previous pilot we talked about, a Banshee that has less weapons.
Don't worry, I'm bigger now.
At least it can still punch.
It's true. So for our data dive today, we are going to look at the Lyran Commonwealth Part 3. When last we talked about the Lyran Commonwealth, the Steiner dynasty had been formed, and Katrina ruled with a grace and elegance. While her realm prospered and innovated, the most notable innovations that came during her rule was that of the rise of the Battlemechs from the Terran hegemony. Naturally, despite being allies in good standing, the Archon immediately ordered the intelligence organizations to secure the new technology. The fact that the joint Lyran Commonwealth and Terran hegemony world of Hesperus II had a Maquis factory made it a prime target for infiltration. After 6 years of work, the Lyran Commonwealth Intelligence Service had only an incomplete map from a single agent they were able to install temporarily. When it was time for Katrina to pass the control of the Lyran Commonwealth from herself to her son Alistair Steiner, due to waning health and stress, she called her son to take her place on the throne, remove the signifiers of the regal office, and placed them upon her son and kissed him on the forehead. And with that, transfer of power was now complete. She retired wordlessly to the deafening applause and adulations of her court, perfectly capturing and preserving the image of her as a ruler for the realm and time. She retired to the planet of Gallery to write her memoirs. By 2445, the Lyran Commonwealth was losing planets on both borders. but mostly to the Draconis Combine. This was mostly due to mismanagement and poor leadership than actual military shortcomings with the troops. Alistair and the Lyran Commonwealth needed something to tip the scales in their favor. His plan was bold and surprising. During his time in the military ranks, he had devised an operation to take the battlemech technology from their allies in a covert raid, Operation Prometheus. Operation Prometheus is the name of the operation conducted by the Lyran Commonwealth to secure the battlemech technology from their strong allies, the Terran hegemony. A bold move to say the least, as failure could mean the loss of an ally. The operation started on February 7th, 2455, with the message, "Prometheus Unbound, good hunting," and ended with agents walking onto ramps on dropships headed for Tharkad with 90% of the full technical specs for a Mackie. The operation would have to be covert, and no trace could be found that would lead back to the Lyran Commonwealth. On the night of the operation, a small dropship came in for a landing at the spaceport close to the Terran hegemony facility on Hesperus 2. As it descended into the atmosphere, it listed off course and eventually crashed into fuel reserves that supplied the target facility and others, setting off an explosion. Fortunately, the ground was communicating with the ship as it entered the atmosphere, and the area was evacuated as much as possible. If it had not been evacuated, any would have seen the ship fire its thrusters and correct at the last second for a controlled hard landing. Shortly after that, 3 teams silently exited the ship and infiltrated the complex. After a short time, a rescue crew arrived. When one tried to open the hatch to the ship, it set off an explosion which created a second sympathetic explosion from the remaining fuel storage. This was both part of the plan and not, as the loss of the ship was a very real possibility, but it was in fact lost due to being wired to go off by an intelligence liaison if anyone tried to enter. This information was not communicated to the rest of the commando teams, and so this event nearly compromised the operational security and success. With the ship lost and the data recovered from the strategic computers in the facility, the teams disappeared into the shadows, only to reappear at the spaceport over the next week, piecemeal, in civilian clothes, with tickets to Tharkad. The destruction of the ship and the fires destroyed all traces of the operation, and the single death at the hands of the teams was disposed of to prevent concern and attention. The operation was a success, and the Terran hegemony security was unaware of anything other than the crash and explosion.
This is what we call disguise by distraction, or sleight of hand.
If I make a big enough explosion, they don't see me.
You know, in infantry school, when we were learning how to use explosives, our instructors always told us any problem can be solved by a sufficiently clever application of explosives.
Not an incorrect statement.
Every problem looks like a wall if all you got's explosives.
With the Lyran Commonwealth now in possession of the technical know-how to make a battlemech, they desperately retooled in order to face the ever-growing pressure along their borders with the Free Worlds League and the Draconis Combine. This is where we will leave off today, with a new ruler, with new tech, and a desperate scramble to secure the Commonwealth borders. Of course, you can read all about the actual Operation Prometheus in the short story Prometheus Unbound that was part of the Kickstarter, which I highly recommend. It's really good.
The proliferation cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend.
I hear it's good.
We shall proliferate our recommendations about it.
Our sources for today are Sarna, Battletech Battlemech Manual, Master Unit List, Succession Wars TRO and RS, 3050 Upgrades TRO, Record Sheets 3050 Inner Sphere Unabridged, Experimental Tech Corporations, TRO 3145, Record Sheets 3145 Unabridged, Prometheus Unbound, Fall Down 7 Times, Get Up 8, A Dish Served Cold, and Sourcebook House Steiner.
I used Technical Readout 3025 for Mechwarrior Jenny Umbra and Lieutenant William Sanderson.
I didn't use nothing.
Big
brain over here.
Yep. This podcast is made possible by our supporters on patreon.com/on the Origin of Battlemechs, link in the description. Our social media on Twitter is at Origin of Mechs. We also have a community Discord, the Armory of Ouroboros, link in the description. You can email us at ontheoriginofbattlemechs@gmail.com. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your platform of consumption, tell your friends about us, and share on your community platform of choice. Special thanks to my friend Laura for the intro and outro. Class dismissed. Everybody have a great day.
I know word good.
Peace out, Mechwarriors.
Stay safe out there.
Module complete. System standby. Would you like to load the next module?
I need a sip of water.
I believe it's Argyle Technologies, actually.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right.
Or
There's an R in
Argyle,
there.
because there's an R in there.
Oh, I must
Argyle.
I must have
Probably
received
auto-corrected it for you.
Agile.
Argile.
AR.
Argyle.
Argyle.
The
The only reason I think
Argyle.
it might be Argyle is Sky has a Scots influence, so it might be a bastardization spelling of Argyle.
A little bit. So, produced on Argyle, or produced by Argyle on Sky. There we go. I can cut that in later.